Mobile MMORPGs are one of the few cases where indie games are usually much better than games made by big companies. Most of the big titles are automatic and feel weird, while indie games end up delivering a much more authentic MMORPG experience. And as you already saw in the title, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this video, so make sure to leave a like and come with me. Well, this right here is basically the face of this video, a hidden indie MMORPG inside the Play Store that nobody talks about, but once you try it, I'm pretty sure you'll get addicted. The game is a completely classless MMORPG, so you're not stuck in that traditional warrior, mage, or archer system. I really like this freedom because you don't need to level up a bunch of different characters. Focusing on just one is already enough. And even though it's an indie project, the game world is surprisingly good. The art style feels like those old school MMORPGs mixed with something more modern. The game barely has any auto systems and really feels like a classic hardcore MMORPG. But just like many games on our list, this is the kind of MMORPG that really needs more players. The Lost Codex was honestly a huge surprise the first time I tried it, a very different MMORPG hidden inside the Play Store. And the first thing that impressed me was the game's open world. It's actually really interesting and probably inspired by some kind of mythology, since the game has gods and many other things to explore. And even though it's an indie project, the amount of content is impressive. Like, when there are multiple classes, huge maps, guild wars, PvP, dungeons, and that classic grind system that really feels like old school MMORPGs. Another thing worth mentioning is that the developers still haven't abandoned the game. They're always listening to the community, checking what players actually want, and of course improving the game over time. Right now, STEIN World is only around 50 megabytes. It runs directly in your PC browser and also on basically any type of mobile phone, and we're going to talk about it right now. The game also doesn't really force you into choosing classes. Instead, it gives you a lot of freedom to follow whatever path you want. And of course, there's no way you won't remember Tibia while playing this game, especially because of the combat system. Without a doubt, what stands out the most is the profession system inside the game, which is much more explored compared to most MMORPGs. A lot of the items there can actually be crafted through the production system, whether it's iron equipment or even mining related items. And it's one of those MMORPGs that may look simple graphically but still offers a ton of content and features. To be honest, I never really liked SKYLORE. I always thought it felt kind of weird, but at the same time, I never see anyone talking badly about this MMORPG. Even being a smaller project and much less known than the giants of the genre, the game has an extremely beautiful world. The game doesn't have that Tibia style combat, but it's also not a full action RPG either. It sits somewhere right in the middle, which is something you'll either love or hate. And honestly, the most impressive thing is seeing how a relatively small indie MMORPG can still deliver such a strong MMO feeling. I almost never see people talking about this game, but even so, it's really impressive how many players it actually has. Sherwood Dungeons is also the perfect example of this video because it's a true indie MMORPG that went directly from the PC browser to mobile. When I first entered the game to test it, I honestly expected nothing. The graphics are very simple, really giving that early 2000s style vibe, and honestly, I had almost forgotten how good MMORPGs from that era could actually be, and this game is another example of that. The game throws you into an open world filled with dungeons, castles, caves, and giant bosses, and the most fun part is how free everything feels. There aren't many quests trying to hold your hand. The game simply drops you into the world and tells you to explore as much as you can. I didn't play this game for a long time because I never watched the anime, but the first time I tried it, I noticed that you really don't need to watch the anime to enjoy it. Sword Art Online Integral Factor is an MMORPG inspired by the Sword Art Online anime, but don't worry, the game still delivers a full MMORPG experience even if you've never watched it, just like me. One thing I really liked is that unlike many generic mobile MMORPGs, the combat here feels much faster and more fun, and even though it's based on a huge franchise, you can still feel that more niche MMORPG community-focused vibe. Because it's centered around the anime, there are also some pretty unique mechanics and ideas here that definitely make it worth testing. Rise Online World is a Turkish MMORPG that became really popular for being the spiritual successor to the legendary Knight Online, and we're going to talk about it right now. If you played Knight Online, you're definitely going to feel at home here. It's another MMORPG from the 2000s era that used to heavily compete with World of Warcraft. The game keeps that same old school essence with tons of PvP, faction wars, a lot of grind, and massive amounts of players everywhere. The mobile version brought an optimized quest system where you can accept and turn in quests from anywhere, and even teleport directly to monster areas, making the game much easier to play on smaller screens while still keeping a lot of that classic hardcore MMORPG feeling. Rise Online is a really interesting indie MMORPG and definitely worth downloading. And it looks like this game is another version of a 2000s MMORPG that brings back that same old school essence but in a different game. Let's talk about RAN Mobile. We're talking about a classic MMORPG from the 2000s style. The game still keeps that traditional formula of choosing your class and fighting to defend your honor. The core classes are still the heart of the game. Honestly, this game is so new on the Play Store that it's hard to even find information about it, but from what I could notice, it really has that old times MMORPG vibe, and honestly, maybe it's worth testing or maybe not. I'm actually kind of lost with this MMORPG. If there's an MMORPG more indie than this one, I honestly don't know it. Let's talk now about Pokemon Blaze Online. Yeah, this one isn't on the Play Store for pretty obvious reasons, but it's an RPG that actually has a lot of people playing, and honestly, that's impressive. Pokemon Blaze Online was one of those MMORPGs that made me think, how did this not become massive yet? Because honestly, the game delivers exactly that online Pokemon experience that so many people dreamed about for years. The game itself is pretty simple. It takes an old school Pokemon formula and basically turns it into an MMORPG where you can meet other players, battle against them, and at the same time continue through the game's story. Another Pokemon style game that you can play completely free on Android. Let's talk now about POKEMMO. POKEMMO is easily one of the most impressive indie MMORPGs I've ever played, because the developers basically took the classic Pokemon experience and turned it into a massive online MMO. The moment I entered the game and saw so many players, I honestly got shocked, and the craziest part is that all of this was made by fans. Even being an indie project, the amount of content in the game is huge. Like from new cities, creating PvP builds, battling other players, you can basically do whatever you want in this game. A MMORPG from Brazil that became really popular here, and from what I researched, it clearly has strong influences from several classic MMORPGs. Let's talk about OHARION. The game has that classic old school MMORPG vibe where the fun isn't about ultra realistic graphics but about the constant feeling of progression. The gameplay has no big secrets and you pretty much understand how to play the moment you jump in. It doesn't try to reinvent everything with crazy mechanics or follow that modern MMORPG trend of heavy character simulation systems. OHARION is actually very simple, and honestly, that's exactly what makes it fun. OHARION is exactly the kind of hidden indie MMORPG that a lot of people ignore because of that simplicity. Honestly, this is another game that I found absolutely beautiful visually. Let's talk now about NAICA Reborn. The game went through a huge rework and finally released its 1.0 version on January 19th, 2026, bringing content that fans had been waiting years for during early access. The game doesn't have many base classes, but with those classes you can play in 9 different styles for each one, which makes the game feel really unique. The game takes place on the continent of Lazul and features 7 different zones, each with its own atmosphere and lore, and the game is heavily focused on dungeon exploration alongside other players, and as you can see, the races in this game are completely different. Honestly, I'm not even sure if this game can really be considered an MMORPG, but it's an interesting game that I found on the Play Store. Let's talk about Legends of ELUMIA. The game works kind of like a Diablo-style experience where you enter smaller dungeons, defeat enemies, and do that classic grind gameplay loop. You can play solo or together with other players, but the game doesn't really have huge cities or giant MMO hubs. And the combat was what hooked me the most during the gameplay. Unlike many automatic mobile MMORPGs, here you actually need to aim your skills and really pay attention to the enemies in front of you. The game has basically no auto systems at all, and honestly, I think it's really worth testing. It might become your next addiction. Usually, I'm not a huge fan of pixel-style MMORPGs, mostly because of the combat, but this game really got me. Let's talk about KAETRAM Online. Unlike many RPGs where you choose to be a warrior or mage right at the start, in KAETRAM you define your playstyle through the weapons you use and the skills you train. And lately, I've really been enjoying these more sandbox-style MMORPG character systems. This is one of those RPGs that really encourages you to live inside a virtual world because you can own your own house, craft your own equipment, and more. But of course, it still has that full MMORPG experience to enjoy together with your friends. Of course, my indie MMORPG list couldn't be complete without this one, highly praised by its community and with huge potential to grow. Let's talk about HEARTWOOD Online. During the time I played, the thing that hooked me the most was the freedom. You can just explore the world, chop wood, mine, fish, craft equipment, fight monsters, or simply spend hours leveling up your professions. The game focuses heavily on the profession system, where professions almost work like a secondary class that you can build into your character, and even though it's an indie MMORPG made by a small team, you can clearly feel the passion behind the project. Probably one of the most beautiful and best made games on this list. With a lot of inspiration from Tibia, this is a very cute pixel style game, but at the same time extremely hardcore. Let's talk about HALMGUARD. During the gameplay, one thing I really liked was the feeling of progression. You start out extremely weak and slowly become stronger over time. There's no auto system, and the game also doesn't hold your hand telling you where to go. It's completely free for you to do whatever you want, including randomly dying to a boss you didn't even know existed. The combat also works really well for the style of game it wants to be. But what impressed me the most was the huge amount of classes and the amount of content the game actually has. GENSOKISHI Online is one of those indie MMORPGs that I started playing and immediately thought, okay, this might be one of the most different games on this list. The first thing that caught my attention was the visual style, and honestly I really like this kind of look with those more chibi style characters that feel cute and very anime inspired. But what really surprised me was the combat. Believe it or not, the game is actually a turn-based RPG, maybe even close to an ideal RPG sometimes, even though it still has an open world to explore and a story for you to follow. Whenever you encounter enemies, the game switches into a turn-based battle system where you need to choose your actions carefully. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still not fully used to MMORPGs that are also turn-based RPGs. Probably one of the games I got the most addicted to on this list, and honestly I wasn't expecting anything from it. Let's talk about ETERSPIRE. When I started playing, the first thing that caught my attention was the simplicity of the game. It doesn't try to be an ultra cinematic MMORPG filled with endless tutorials and exaggerated effects. Honestly, it almost feels like an improved version of those Roblox games where everything is intuitive to learn but still really fun. But because it's still an MMORPG, it manages to feel easy and complicated at the same time. Even being an online MMO, it gives off that comfortable feeling of an indie MMORPG made by people who genuinely love the genre. This is definitely one of the most unique games on the list. We already talked about a lot of Pokemon style MMORPGs, and most of them aren't on the Play Store, but this one actually is. Let's talk about DUEL Revolution. Honestly, there's not much mystery here. If you've played any Pokemon game in your life, you'll immediately understand how to play this one. You create your character at the start and choose between 3 starter monsters. After that, you're free to explore the cities, but the big difference is that there are other real players doing the exact same thing around you, and the cool part is that the game has both a story mode and an online mode where you can play together with other people. You won't find the original Pokemon like Pikachu here, but it's still a really good game and definitely worth testing. One of those MMORPGs that mixes heavily with survival gameplay, and a lot of people don't even know this game exists. Let's talk about Dragon and Home. The first time I played it, I honestly thought it was just an online survival game because of how the beginning works, collecting stone, chopping wood, almost like some kind of Minecraft style experience. But after a few hours, the game suddenly changes. You choose a class and start fighting bosses together with other players, and honestly I was really surprised by how much the game evolved. And honestly that makes the game way more addictive than it first seems. During the gameplay I spent hours just exploring new areas, both to build my house and also to improve my character with better equipment. Even though I think this indie MMORPG is absolutely genius, when I actually played it, I ended up getting really frustrated. Let's talk about Born Again Online. Unlike many games on our list, this one is much more focused on a roguelike experience. While most MMORPGs try to bring back that old school MMO feeling, this game focuses on a much more addictive gameplay style. There are multiple character types for you to choose from, and most missions can be played solo or together with other players, but the game doesn't really have giant cities or huge open maps to explore. And of course, just like in every good roguelike, the big thing here is that if your character dies, you lose everything. Probably one of the most successful games on this list. Let's talk now about Ancient Reborn, a MMORPG with over 5 million downloads. When I entered the game, I immediately noticed that it had a lot of inspiration from classic MMORPGs like RuneScape and World of Warcraft, especially with its focus on exploration and character progression. This is another MMORPG here that focuses heavily on simulation systems. You can mine, chop wood, fish, craft equipment, cook, and level up many different professions, so it always feels like there's something useful to do inside the world. And even though it's still a relatively small indie MMORPG, you can clearly feel the passion that the developers put into the project, and that's definitely what makes the game stand out. If there's one MMORPG that truly deserves to be on this list and also deserves way more players, it's definitely this one. Let's talk about AEROTALES. The moment I started playing, I instantly felt that classic anime MMORPG energy from games that became huge years ago, like Fliff, for example. Right now, from what I could notice, the game seems to be going through a rough moment and is missing a lot of players, but you can clearly tell that the developers are investing heavily in promotion, and honestly, it's kind of sad that this isn't even a sponsored video. This is easily one of the best games on this list. You can clearly feel that the people behind it genuinely love MMORPGs, and it's also one of the few games here that truly listens to what the community wants. At the end of the day, all these MMORPGs show the same thing. There are still a lot of hidden games out there delivering unique experiences far from auto systems and repetitive formulas. See you next video.